Welcome to He Did This to Me, the sports podcast from a father and son who happen to be mostly optimistic Knicks, Jets, and Mets fans. My name is Nick, a.k.a. Goody, and with me is my old man, a.k.a. the big guy, Noel. And just like his name, all we do is win. Let's get to the show. It's time to begin. The Knicks yesterday, quite a bit to unpack with our Knickerbockers yesterday. There was the Stephen Bondi article early in the day where Bridges he said straight out that he felt like the starters needed to play less and that the bench needed to play more. He also had an interesting quote that talked about his usage in the offense and a little bit more to be interpreted there. And then he went out and went 13 of 21, had 33 points, including a buzzer beater, double bang 3 at the end of the game in overtime, down by 2 to beat the scrappy Portland Trailblazers. Like I said, lots to unpack here, big guy, but talk to me. First and foremost, how did you feel and what do you feel about what was said in the article?
Listen, I mean, it's Bridges' opinion. Bridges feels that way. He said what he felt. I do think, certain things like that are better left to be said between coach and player or players in the locker room or whatever. I don't understand why you would say that to a writer. And then for the coach to come out and say, well, you know, they didn't actually have that conversation. Clearly was something loose or whatever. I don't think it was very serious. I think they genuinely like one another. I think the player loves the coach, but he just spoke his mind, and you might want to be a little more careful with that, and maybe Bridges needs to learn the whole landscape a little better. You're playing in New York now, guy, not in Brooklyn, so the press is going to be there, and everything you say is going to be heavily scrutinized. So that said, I thought that Thibs addressed it. He was clearly annoyed to have to address it. I get why he's annoyed, but you know, I don't think it's a big deal. I think winning makes a lot of the noise go away. I think a lot of what Thibs said made sense. You know, that they are lessening minutes as time goes along, but you're never going to see, because of how many minutes they played early part of the season, you're never going to see them drop to like 10th in the league in minutes. They're always going to be in the top because they played so much early. So we'll lessen now, and hopefully that pays dividends. But I thought Thibs made a good point. He's like, look, you know, OG and Mikal Bridges are my wing defenders, and they're out there for a reason. If there are top wings like Jaylen Brown and Tatum are on the floor, these guys are going to be on the floor at the same time. And when they're off the floor, they're off the floor. And like I told you, I did look at those minutes. And when you look at wings like that, they're playing maybe 1 minute or less a game than, say, Brunson and Bridges. Not Brunson. I'm sorry, no, Bridges and
OG.
Hart.
Bridges and OG. And those are the top two, and then Hart is, you know, he's in like number 7 last time I checked as far as minutes per game, whereas Brunson is down at the 20 to 21 range. Agree with a lot of what you said. I pretty much agree with everything that you said, honestly. I thought it was not good of him to have this conversation, you know, in the court of public opinion. And I thought it was very interesting that Thibs then said, no, we didn't talk about that. So who knows exactly what that is. It doesn't seem like there's some sort of misinterpretation. He says that he had a sit down and talk with him about it, and then Thibs says, no, we didn't. So I'm sure they'll probably be asked about that again at their next media availability. The Bridges and OG versus other wings. And I think this is something that, you know, this is the only thing I didn't agree with what Thibs spoke about, because if you look at the games where we're playing like a Boston, you know, Bridges is playing 43 and Tatum is playing 37. And if you look at teams like Oklahoma City and Cleveland, and I think that this is somewhat a product of their depth, but I think it's more of a product of an edict that their coach has and that they kind of go by, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Donovan Mitchell have played over 40 minutes one time this entire season. I thought that was pretty remarkable when I heard that. I couldn't believe that, honestly. And so I do think that sometimes it's not just about matching this guy with that guy, because we see them have huge minute totals when they're playing against not some of the better teams in the league and not some of the better wings in the league. I think that Thibs likes to have the guys out there. And I think more than anything, it has to do with the fact that we were missing guys early in the season. As a Shamit has gotten some more, some more rhythm and he's playing better, you have more room to be able to put some of these guys on the bench for a little bit longer. And at the end of the day, this thing that has followed Tom Thibodeau for all of these years, there's a part of it that is just, incorrect sometimes. Just if you look at the numbers, last year, I think that the big part is incorrect is that when people try to blame injuries on Tom Thibodeau, I do think there is something to his teams sometimes at the end of games, his starters when they're playing a bunch more minutes than the other guy's starters, and now it's the crunch time. We sometimes wilt, and I think a lot of that, you always say guys start making mental mistakes when they're tired, and the amount of times we've let a team back in a game where it seemed like it was well done and over, including last night, by just doing boneheaded stupid things. Those are, I think, maybe possibly related to the fatigue. And last night, it's interesting because whenever these big criticisms get made, it started with Channing Frye here last week saying something about it, and then Bridges making those comments, and now it's everywhere, not just in like Knicks media, but in national media, this conversation about Thibs in the minutes. And there was conversations about this earlier in the season, I think just around like New Year's, right around like Martin Luther King Day. And it seems like there's always a response from Thibs where, like, even last night, I noticed like we got Precious in very early. We got, they just seemed like there was a lot more rotation in that first quarter and a lot more guys. When you look at the box score, we legitimately ran a 9-man rotation, not a 7.5 or 8. We ran a 9-man rotation. And I think everybody is happy with that, including a guy like Bridges. I also think that some of it might not even have been Bridges saying that he feels personally like he needs to play less minutes. I think some of it might be Bridges like just trying to like lobby for more minutes for some of the bench guys. He seems like that type of guy to me. And that he added that part to his overall statement. Did you by chance see today Stephen A on First Take or get any of the clips of what he talked about?
No.
So it was pretty heavy-handed. He started off his little monologue by saying Tom Thibodeau is in serious trouble. And he talked about the fact that this has continued to follow him and the fact that this is a player you just gave up 5 draft picks for. If you get to a point where this actually becomes some sort of dispute between the two, even if it's behind closed doors and the Knicks are, kind of feel like they need to make a decision, he thinks Thibodeau could lose that. Now, he went out of his way to say over and over again how happy he is that Tom Thibodeau is the coach, that he thinks he's a good coach, but he feels like this is his Achilles heel. And when you have this many people, like not just people like us or media people, but when you have actual real former players, current players, and then now a player on your team who's the NBA's Iron Man is putting, quotes to this, that you need to be doing everything you can to avoid that. And that at the end of the day, everybody wants to win games. We've both said before, do you want to have them play less minutes and lose more games? But is there something to this where at the end of season and at the end of games, these guys are running to the ground? And I do think that, Thibs needs to monitor that just for his own like job health. But also I don't blame any injuries on Thibs. I more so want to see development of some of these backup players, and I want to see our, players be able to finish games strong.
I honestly think we've seen fantastic development with our young players. Maybe not on the timeline some people want. They want it to be year one, these guys. But I think we've seen with Thibs that he's developed some players very well. He's made careers for quite a few players with the Knicks. Deuce has an absolute career in the NBA now. Whether he's with the Knicks or not going forward, he will have a nice, lucrative career. One, because he's good enough, but two, because I think Thibs developed him and brought him along. If you look at Quentin Grimes, what he's doing now, which I was always pro Quentin Grimes. I was willing to let him go in the trade, obviously, for what we got back, but I've always been a believer in him. Thibs brought him along, and all of these guys, when they leave New York, are very complimentary to Thibs. What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, including guys like Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose and all these guys. They love Thibs, love him. And, Thibs is getting them hurt. I just think that, I get it. If you're Thibs, you're a little bit annoyed. It's, look, man, the guy's the best coach we've had in I don't know how long. But of course, there are many who feel like they know better or have criticisms. And listen, they're entitled. At the end of the day, Thibs has to do what he thinks is right. And, I'm willing to ride with him.
So a lot of people say that you see what you see from Grimes now, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's playing in a more modern offense and that he's no longer, basically just parked in the corner. And that is a good transition to what we've seen from Mikal Bridges since we've seen Jalen Brunson go down. And what we've seen is him having the ball in his hand, him creating, him being able to get to that mid range, and then obviously when he needs to hit the three. That shot and that game winner last night. It was great. It was great. I texted people in my group chat that are in New York City. I was wondering if they heard me and my son. Very, very nice that my son was on spring break, so he and I got to sit and watch that game and enjoy it together. It reminds me of times when I was a kid watching, Starks hit that last second three against the Phoenix Suns back in the day, things like that. And it's such a conundrum because nothing's absolute when we talk about this. But then the thing that people always say about Thibs, I'm always quick to look at when one of my teams acquires a player or they acquire, a coach or GM, anybody, I always try to go out and search a little bit what the previous team they were on says. And the thing about Thibs that people always say, in addition to the whole minutes police, is the fact that he's one of the best guys to get your team out of the mud, but he's not the guy that gets them to the mountaintop. And listen, if you're in a league as many times as long as he's been, and you never win a championship, that's going to kind of become the narrative around you as a coach or a player, really, and I feel like, I don't know about his relationship with Bridges. I know he has such a great relationship with everybody else. I don't think it's bad at all. Even last night, you saw them communicating multiple times. There's no part of me that thinks it's bad. I don't know if he, has love for him, like, say, a Josh Hart or a Brunson does. Who knows? And I do think that yesterday could possibly be what we look back at as the turning point of the season, because two big things happened. It became Mikal, whether he was trying to do this or whether he was not, he put the microscope on the whole Thibs and the minute situation. And if that forces Thibs to maybe relent on that a little bit, evolve a little bit, that I think could be good for the Knicks. And also the way that Mikal then turned around and played in that game. I love when a guy puts the microscope on himself and puts the heat on himself and then steps up. It doesn't make him, go into a corner. And Bridges yesterday being that type of aggressive, even when Brunson comes back, that's something we have to see. The offense that we are running now, where we are not just giving it to one guy on one side and everybody standing on the other side with no movement, and we're doing a lot more cutting and back cutting and stuff like that. These things all have to continue when Brunson comes back. And I think that Thibs, as a coach, has to evolve to the point where he says, you know what? This guy right here, he can't just stand in the corner. He needs the ball. And we have to, early in games, both him and Brunson, and you've seen them do this at certain times throughout the season, but it needs to be a little bit more consistent, in my opinion, where early in games, we are running things for him. Cat doesn't need things run for him as much as, say, a guy like Bridges does. We need to run things for him and get him involved. We ask him to do so much defensively. Let's go out of our way to make sure that this guy is a integral part and a ball handler in our offense. I think that that's something that will pay dividends for us. And one of the main reasons is because Bridges is pretty goddamn clutch. I know last night was as clutch as it gets, but we've seen him throughout the season that in big moments, offensively and defensively, Bridges is going to make big plays. And sometimes with Brunson, he's so small, being able to give it to a guy who's that big with those long arms and allow him to be able to take some of those big mid-range shots in close moments, that's going to be important. Brunson can't do it all by himself. So if this, makes everybody, Bridges needs to wake up about it. Thibs needs to wake up about it. Brunson, I hope, is watching and seeing it. If all of these guys hopefully have some sort of realization, and we don't just do this sometimes, but we put these things into practice, I think it's just going to pay dividends for us in the long run.
I agree with everything you're saying, but I also would add, Nick, that you see, I feel like every time I hear every time I hear the coach speak, Thibs speak about the team and whatnot, he speaks more in the concept of, trust the movement, trust the pass, trust this, trust that. And I feel like, I honestly feel like, Nick, like basketball is, it's like we've always said, it's rhythm, and it's very much jazz. And it's you're interpreting all the time. It's not like football, say, where this is the play, everyone must run their exact route or do their exact thing for this to be successful. I think basketball is a movement thing, and we can improvise and we can change at any time. I also think that, like the way they're playing now with Brunson out, we've seen them play like this before earlier in the season at times when Brunson was in, but then get away from it quite a bit. Now, I don't think the coach is telling them, stop doing that, let's do this. I think even if the coach said that, which if the players didn't agree, like Brunson didn't agree, he could say to coach that, no, coach, let's try this or let's run this. So they would speak either during the game or in practice, and they would change up. I think a lot of times, Nick, whether a team's run certain things is really up to the guys on the floor. And I think with Brunson out, they're running it a little different. I think it's going to be up to Brunson to make sure that they're running it a little different when he comes back. I think most of it rests on him and not the other guys standing around and watching. But let's keep doing the same things. Listen, man, there may be some things that they just run better without Brunson because things are different. There's some things different when Brunson's in the game. Mostly, obviously, better, but there's some maybe worse. I mean, I see Josh Hart bringing the ball up, being the primary ball handler on a lot of these things, and then just handing off to Bridges when he gets into the front court. I just see some things that they could maybe do different. I think a lot of things, get Brunson off the ball, let Bridges handle the ball a lot of the times. But when Brunson's in the game, they don't do that. And I wish they would do that sometimes more, just to switch it up. And like you say, get Bridges involved early. When he's involved early, it's much better for us. But listen, he was involved early last night. What did it mean at the end of the game? We were tied up and we went into overtime. Luckily, it worked out. But, and that's just it, Nick. If Bridges misses that last shot, our conversation today about this whole thing is much different. The minutes the least, everybody is going to be going nuts about that about the issue with Bridges and his conversation. It's going to be a different tenor. And I think this is why I always get frustrated sometimes with sports talk and all that, because I think no matter what anyone does, Nick, it is human nature to talk and speak to the results that just happened. And for anyone to say, oh, I'm not even talking about that, blah, blah, that's bullshit. You can't eliminate the knowledge of what just happened. So you're going to speak about things that way. And I think a lot of it has to do with that, depending on the result of the previous game or recent games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the I don't even say that's the world we live in. I think that's kind of always been the case, especially with sports. That's what's great about it, is that, you can erase that bad memory with something that happens the next day, and that it's such a results business. Now, I think that all the things that you talked about, as far as the Knicks not necessarily doing these things when Brunson's playing and they're doing more of them now, I think that's exactly the problem, is that the person I need to get my team to do what they're supposed to do all the time is the coach. I need the coach to be able to get through to them and to say to them, this is what we do. I don't care. And as far as basketball being much more of a rhythm game, and, it's something with interpretation, and, you're running sets more than you're running actual plays, I think that's the problem. That's a Nick problem. You look at the other best teams in the league, the good teams, they run a lot more set plays than we do. It's eye test. You can see it, and it's statistically true as well. People way smarter than me show videos and breakdowns I saw, and especially with Brunson at the ends of games, we are absolutely, the play that is being run is Brunson ISO, and that's what we're running. And I don't understand why it's that just over and over and over again, even with just some more wrinkles. And there was a time earlier in the season where, earlier in games, we have like 3 sets that we run. One of them's like Brunson ISO, and then we have another one where we have Brunson getting a staggered screen across the top, and then we have another one where we run 5 out, but we're cutting people through. And then if after the pick and roll, if the opposite wing is now down cutting for a 3 in the corner, those are basically the 3 sets we run. 2 of the 3 of them involve a lot more motion than the other ones, and at the ends of games, we typically run the Brunson ISO, and we do it a lot throughout the game. I would just like to see us diversify, add to that a little bit, and also run when we get in the half court, when we're not moving it up fast and we slow down. Thibs needs to be yelling at them, this is what we're running. And that's what they have to run. And obviously, it's not always going to go exactly to plan. I'm just hoping that this little time that we have makes the light bulb go off for everybody involved and says, all right, we have this great player. We still haven't quite maximized what this great player can do because of the way that we are running offense. And we're definitely not maximizing what some of these other people do. There's a whole lot of things that, to me, Dad, when I just watch with my own eyeballs in real time, make no sense to me. Like, why are we having Josh Hart be the screener on pick and rolls late in the game? So now it's just an easy double team for the other team because they don't care about guarding Josh Hart. When you have Karl Anthony Towns, who is the best pick and pop big man maybe of all time. He just hit 2 threes to seemingly put the game away, but of course that was not the case. I just don't understand like why we're running that with Josh Hart as the screener. Josh Hart needs to be in the dunker spot, if anything, and that allows him to rebound too. But also, like, you know, it's just he's a non-factor as the screener in a pick and roll from the top of the key with the guy dribbling. Now, last night at the end of the game, the play that we were in to win the game, I thought it was a fantastic play. I thought it was a fantastic play because what you do is you take Josh Hart and you make him the screener at that point where you want the easy switch to come. There's such a short amount of time, they're not going to be able to double team. And then if you watch that play, the game-winning play, Deuce then pops out. If they had both hedged quick hard to him, Josh Hart dives to the basket, and then Deuce would have been wide open over there on the wing. He was standing there wide open. It would have been a lot to get all that done in that short amount of time, but make Josh Hart the screener in that situation. I just don't understand sometimes the thought process behind some of the either plays or lack of plays that we run. Like the time at the end of regulation, when they tie the game up on that bullshit call against your boy Mitchell Robinson. And then if you watch that inbound play, Dad, and shout out to CP and Alex Tratoros. They were, I was watching their post game last night, and they had it running on a loop in the background, and it was driving me nuts. I didn't want to watch it anymore because Josh Hart grabs the ball. And we have 2 guys, Bridges and kind of OG, but mostly Bridges, just walking up to his guy and doing some shit like this and trying to get open. There's 7 seconds left. A timeout would not have advanced the ball right there, but right there, call it. Honestly, if I'm the coach, I would count to 3. As soon as he picks up the ball, I would count to 2 or 3. And if he didn't get in, call timeout. And let's actually have something where we have a guy getting screened or something where we're doing something where we have more than one option, which is just Bridges trying his best to beat his man and get open under with the backboard right there. I don't understand why right there with 2 timeouts, you don't just call a timeout and run a play. And seems like there's a lot of what we do where it's just like, it's just kind of like, trust the pass, play the game the right way. And I think that we would benefit from a little more structure in some of those moments.
Nick, I think that 2 things. One, by the time the count comes to 3, Josh Hart has just moved his feet, so the play is over.
Yeah, but Thibs wasn't going to call a timeout. And Thibs rarely calls a timeout.
If Josh Hart needed a timeout there, he should have called a timeout, first of all, and he shouldn't have moved his feet. Third of all, I am sure this team, and frankly, should be every professional team, knows how to run an inbound play. He didn't want to call a timeout because he didn't want the defense to be set. He wanted them to be scrambling, is my thought. And I think my team knows at the end of games how to run an inbound play. Why they all seem to brain fart right there, especially Josh Hart, I don't know. But you know what? I mean, I get it, Nick. And again, I think that's a criticism born of the result. If Josh Hart had called a timeout or Josh Hart had just stayed in his spot, there'd be nothing to talk about because Josh Hart can't get the ball right there. Just call a timeout. It's the same thing.
As soon as he picked up the ball, I was screaming at the before he moved, before 1 second went off, I was screaming, call a timeout, call a timeout.
Right, Nick. But what I'm saying to you is if Josh Hart got the ball in and we ran down court, we win the game, then nobody's talking about it.
No, I still would have said I think we should have called a timeout right there. 100% I would have said that because I
Well,
was saying it before it happened.
I would also say, Nick, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. People always say, well, I was saying it before it happened. But a lot of times, Nick, people think it before it happens. But if nothing works out and it works out perfectly, you know, it's just not.
I sit here on this show all the time and say that I thought this and I was wrong. I say that all the time. I say that all the time on the show. I in that situation, I give the same way I criticize Thibs. I give Thibs his props for the running of that out of bounds play at the very end of the game. I thought that was like I just broke down the whole intricacies of it and thought it was great. If anything, if there's anybody I'm fair to, it's Thibs because I love Thibs. I love Thibs overall as a coach. I can't even criticize him without throwing in some sort of, disclaimer about how, much I appreciate him and whatnot. But at the end of the day, in that situation, 10 out of 10 times, I think you should just immediately call a timeout. Not forget letting the defense set up. Call a timeout and run an inbound play. Dad, I don't honestly, underneath the basket, full court.
First of all, he shouldn't have been right under the basket.
I've never
That's
seen,
his fault.
Yes, but what I'm saying to you is I have never seen
that's basketball 101.
What I'm saying to you is I have never seen the Knicks run a play in that situation. Never. We don't run plays. It's usually Brunson just trying to lose his man and get open. No one screens. No one does anything. No one's no big man's flashing to, the middle. Dad, and the whole Thibs tenure, we don't run plays in that situation. And I think that's it. I don't get that. And I watch other teams.
I get it, Nick. And, sometimes things confuse me too. It's just sometimes I think to myself, maybe I just don't understand. This man has a much deeper understanding than me. Maybe this man understands something or is making this call for a reason that I don't have the bandwidth or knowledge of the game to understand. And because I've seen him do so many things that I think are correct, things that at times I'm like, oh, shit, yeah, that was a great move, that I would never have thought of, and the results are so good. We say, you say, yeah, at the end of the game, we should go differently. And sometimes I feel that way, but I also look at the results. We've been fantastic at the end of the games with the Brunson ISO. Am I going to complain about that? No. So when it doesn't work, do I say, oh, Brunson ISO sucks? It works 8 times out of 10. Are the 2 times out of 10 that it doesn't work? Do I think it's a terrible play? I don't actually, because I think it just didn't work that time. But most of the time it works. I would rather them not run ISO at the end of games too. But we can't argue with the results. What we've done at the end of games this year. He's going to win the clutch. He's going to win the clutch award because he's been so good at it.
Thibs can be good, but he's not beyond reproach. And
nobody's beyond reproach. Nobody's beyond criticism. But all I'm saying is that I think sometimes people need to I think sometimes people want to be more critical, of Thibs or whatever. And it's just Knicks fans. It's the way they always are. New York fans. But
some of this has followed him his whole career.
Right.
A lot of these criticisms have followed him his entire career.
I hear it more now, obviously, because
uninventive on offense, runs his players into the ground. These are things that literally have followed him his entire career. And I do think that Go ahead.
I think it's just interesting that we hear all these pundits saying that, but his players not saying that. Bridges saying this yesterday about the time was one of the first times I've actually seen one of his players saying something like that about him. And like I say, once again, I think the proof is in the pudding that all his guys who played for him just about love him. In fact, the one guy who we thought didn't love him, or maybe the 2 guys, were Cat and this guy, my man who just went to Golden State. And they will come out and say, right, Jimmy Buckets, will come out and say how much they love Thibs and think he's great. But I guess all the pundits somehow know better. And that to me,
the NBA players voted him the coach they'd least like to play for.
I'm talking about the players who've played for him. I'm not talking about what everybody else sees.
As much as he's coached, there has to be some guys that played for him that are on that list. I
get it, but a lot of the guys, all the stars that I know who played for him, it's not that they're non-committal when they're asked about him. They're effusive in their praise of him. Okay? So that speaks to me more than any of this other crap. Okay. I mean, I listen to them more than I listen to Channing Frye. And did you see, by the way, Thibs' reaction when they said it was Channing Frye?
Who?
Who? And then when they said Channing Frye, he was like, "Oh well, okay, there you go." Listen, man. I love that reaction. That was funny.
I did love that reaction. I can like 80% of what Tom Thibodeau does and not like 20%. And I think that's probably about the ratio that I'm at. And, I'm not going to ever look at something. Every person that we criticize in professional sports is more experienced than us. That doesn't mean that they're always right and we're always wrong. So,
but after a certain point, Nick, would Bill Parcells say when he was with the Giants, okay. And this is, of course, after he wins a championship, but leading up to that, there's a point when you just backed off because the guy just gets proven right more often than not. And I don't think the reason, say, Thibs hasn't won a championship, I think that has less to do with Thibs and more to do with personnel. I think every time a team wins a championship, it has much more to do with personnel than the coach. But can a coach take them over a certain level? Yeah, they can. I don't think any of Thibs' team have been actual championship level yet. I don't think this Knicks team is, and I don't think any of the Chicago teams were or Minnesota teams were competitive. And I think for the most part, his teams have overachieved, like Knicks last year. Okay. And we're doing even better this year. So I think, I don't know. I think things that we don't understand or don't get. My point is that even if I don't understand it or don't get it or I'm critical of it, I'm still willing to lean to Thibs' side because I think he's proven to us that more often than not, much more often than not, he knows what the fuck he's doing. And the results are what I'm talking about. And I'm very happy with the results.
Yeah, my lack of understanding, I don't think, has anything to do with the fact that we have not run one inbound play full court under the basket the entire time he's been the coach of the team. I just don't get that. I would love to ask anybody. I would love to hear his explanation for why we don't even have that. Like, we don't have one. We've never done it every single time. And it's something that has consistently plagued us. It's something you don't like the results of how we inbound the ball late in games when people are trying to deny us underneath the basket, because it's something that's consistently plagued us for the last few years. And it's typically just Brunson at the elbow trying to like shake a guy and get open. I don't get that.
Well, I mean, clearly we need to discuss that more, because if someone who is in the game, as long as Josh Hart thinks it's a good idea to go underneath the backboard. I mean, seriously, Nick, I'm sorry, but
and not knowing the rule.
I said that to you when you were 12.
Right.
You cannot inbound the ball when you're underneath the rim, underneath the backboard. You're cutting off all of this. I mean, Nick, you're 12.
Yeah.
This guy's been playing for 25 years. Come on,
Josh Hart, Dad. Josh Hart. I mean, he's good for a bonehead moment every once in a while. And that was the biggest. I mean, Jesus.
Yes. Absolutely boneheaded. But Nick, he makes some of the, and I get it, what you're saying about the screening and all that. First of all, I think there might be something to, he's just a much better screener than, say, like Cat. So I don't know why they don't use Cat in that situation.
The Cat and Brunson pick and roll numbers are crazy.
There has to be a reason why, Nick. You're not,
I disagree with the reason.
We're not, I don't know what the reason is.
I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I disagree with it.
There might be a good reason, Nick, that if you knew the reason, might change your mind. Clearly, it changes Thibs' mind because they do it all the time. Right. This is what I'm saying. Okay.
I think he's wrong. I can't think he's wrong at anything he does.
You can think he's wrong, but I think you need to have a little more humility and realize I don't agree with Thibs, but
if I don't agree with him, doesn't that mean he's wrong?
You could be wrong.
If I don't agree with him, doesn't that mean that I think he's wrong? Isn't that what that means?
I get it. But you never consider the fact that maybe you're wrong.
Oh, I consider that. That's of course I consider that. Of course I know that that's a possibility. But I believe that's the whole reason I believe what I believe is because I think I'm right. I mean, I don't understand what else is believing something other than thinking you are right. And I just feel like when it comes to Hart, at the end of games, especially, the other team is trying to get us on offense to have Josh Hart take a three. and they funnel it and it happens and he doesn't hit them. I'm telling you, when Brunson comes back, I know that he comes up with an occasional huge offensive rebound and things like that. I think that the overall spacing on every single play and the overall having a guy like a guy like Deuce on the floor rather than him and his ability to knock down a big shot. I honestly, I think that that's going to be another tough decision that Thibs is going to have to make at the ends of games. And also, Josh Hart defensively recently, not great. He takes unnecessary risks. Like there's a couple times, like late in the game, where he's got a guy, the guy spins, and he's right there. He's in front of him, and Scoot. He's bigger than Scoot, and he goes and tries to like he's D'ing him up. He's keeping him in front of him. He's got him on a point where he's picked up his dribble, but then Josh Hart goes to try to like go around him and get a steal, and he just like spins the other way and puts it up. And it's just like, dude, just at that point, stay in front of him and make him shoot over top of you. He takes even Mitch a couple times yesterday did a couple things where it was just like, dude, just stand there with your hands up. He's a foot behind the backboard and he's right there. Stand there with your hands up. He's got nothing he can do. But I feel as though that's going to be another tough decision. And all of the analytics will tell you that, an offensive rebound here or there as compared to having true spacing and what that's going to allow Brunson and Cat and Bridges to do when you don't have one guy who is just not being guarded on the floor, some Deuce with the starting lineup as the season goes towards the end. I think that could end up being something. Whether or not that happens, I think could be a big factor on how the season ends up.
Well, I mean, listen, Deuce has been playing great. And, I think what we're seeing is Deuce rounding into shape. I mean, that injury has taken a while and it lingered a little bit in as far as him being in the best shape possible and being able to do everything that he does. I think we're seeing it now. He's all the way back now. And I think that's becoming clear that he wasn't all the way back, say, a month and a half ago, So I love what I'm seeing from him. I hope we see more, but here's, like I say, here's yet another guy where, I mean, listen, man, there's no doubt that Thibs made Mitch's career. He made Hartenstein's career. And by the way, I'm watching Hartenstein last night.
When you say made their career, what do you think that
I don't
think played for Thibs, they would have never improved and gotten good? Like,
I don't know.
I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say that hey, these guys definitely leveled up under Thibs stewardship, but like I'm not going to sit here and say that if they never played for Thibs, they'd be out of the league.
I didn't say that. I'm saying I should say they leveled up. Listen, I don't think Mitch is as good a player. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who else he would have played for, but he wasn't as good when he started, and he's clearly improved greatly under the Thibs coaching regime.
That's about 90% of players that play that they're better 5 years in the league than they are the first.
Nick, some guys improve a lot, some guys don't. I think that Mitch has improved a lot because of the coaching he's gotten, whether it be Thibs or whoever Thibs has coaching him. Same thing with Hartenstein. I mean, Hartenstein wasn't that heralded a player before he came and he played a couple of years for us. And when I look at him now, as I was watching the game the other night against Boston, I watched some of that game. His passing is elite. I mean, for a big man, he's got fantastic passing skills. And he just plays the game in a very good way. And he plays the game much better than he did before he came to the Knicks.
But a lot of people would say that Thibs dragged his feet on that and didn't give Hartenstein the rope that he needed for quite some time, and only when he was forced to due to injury. Remember, at one point, Hartenstein was the backup center. Mitchell Robinson got hurt, and rather than making Hartenstein the starting center, Thibs put Jericho Sims in the starting lineup because he didn't want Hartenstein to get out of his role, which that's another thing. I don't even know what that means. So the Hartenstein one, there's a whole lot. If you go and you really look at how he was basically forced to put him into action, and at the very beginning, Hartenstein was not happy with his role and basically wasn't playing for the Knicks. I don't know if that's the best example.
All right. Okay. I think Thibs is doing a good job of coaching those guys and making them much better players. I think those guys are very happy that they got a chance to play for Tom Thibodeau and his coach team, and their careers will be better for it. That's just me.
The Knicks defense has been a lot better since we have gotten our guy Mitchell Robinson back. They are now 4th in defensive rating. since Mitchell Robinson has returned. Even Towns D looks like it's improved. I mean, he had a fantastic sequence in overtime yesterday where he stays. Was it? I think it was Scoot again. Stays with him. No. It was Avita. He stays with him. He blocks his shot. Then he recovers and he's able to stop their big man when they end up getting a 24-second. I'm pretty sure that's how that possession ended for them. I've seen him play a little bit better. I saw him moving his puppies yesterday. I saw him making some on-time rotations yesterday and defending guys without fouling. I mean, this guy Klingen is, he's huge. It just seems like he never ends, that guy. And
but he's big.
Decent player. And listen, let's not forget that shot by Bridges was over that guy too. You know what I mean? That was a hell of a shot by Bridges, man. Fading to the side over that guy. I mean, just an all-time shot. But yeah, man, I've seen Towns rather step up and be a little bit better on the defensive end I hear recently, and hopefully that's a trend to come. Tibbs has said, hey, we have to rely on our defense now with Jalen out. Again, maybe this is a silver lining where, we kind of figure out, kind of how we need to play defense, and Jalen comes back and he's able to kind of just slowly insert himself into what we kind of have already figured out during this little injury stint, hopefully little injury stint.
I think that, if you look at past podcasts, that's exactly what I said, that I think that Cat's defense will improve when Mitch comes back. I think part of that, Nick, is, well, listen, the overall team defense has improved even with Mitch coming back and with JB going down. Tip of the spear now is Deuce. And that's making a big difference. So JB's got to pick up his overall defense and just moving his feet, which, it's going to be tough.
I feel like he has been lately, though.
He has been better, Nick, but clearly Deuce is better than that.
Yeah, but JB's maxed out.
He's never going to get to that point. Exactly. But okay, he's got to be a little smarter, whatever. But also, like I'm saying, Cat's defense being better, I think is part because Mitch is on the court, but part also because Mitch is on the court. When sometimes you see another guy
sometimes it's not even with Mitch on the court, is what I'm saying.
Okay,
which I find interesting.
When Mitch is on the court, Cat's watching that, man.
Right.
And when you see another guy doing what you're supposed to be doing and doing it very well, you got to do it better. That's, again, human nature. You got to do it better. And, I think we're seeing the results of that now.
No doubt. I definitely think that some of it is, osmosis, basically. And I feel like, Mitch is continuing to move along, shooting free throws way better. You notice that. And
so flat.
Yeah, okay. He's 4 or 5, 80%, baby. What are we talking about? Come on, let's go.
Don't bank on 80%.
Like I said before, Shamet has looked better. And I just feel like overall
there's another guy getting in shape, Nick. Coming around from that early. He's really, you see him now moving around court. He's moving around court much more spry now than he would say a month ago.
Yeah, and definitely the confidence and the rhythm is coming as well. And 100%. We just gotta. It was very important that we win these last 2 games. You don't want this West Coast trip to be like some 1-4 type shit. Now the worst it can be is 2-3. And especially when you look at our schedule here coming up, we get done with the West Coast trip with the game Saturday against the Warriors. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But then we got Heat, and then we got Spurs, and then we got the Spurs Hornets back to back is crazy. And then we got Wizards. So we crisscross the country. It's not even like we come home. We crisscross the country, including a back-to-back. It's 4 games in 6 nights starting on Saturday. So it was important that we won these couple games because, without JB, some of those games are going to be tough to win. And we got to make sure that we just totally don't free fall. So getting these 2 dubs was extremely important, I thought. And this Saturday, we play against the Warriors. I mean, we have the new addition, PJ Tucker. I predict that PJ Tucker will be inserted into the game at some point. And at some point, I don't know if it's going to be during the game. It could be during a timeout. It could be before the game. It could be after the game. PJ Tucker and Draymond are getting nose to nose. And I really, really hope that the Knicks come out and they play with a little bit of an edge that night, because this fool Draymond and the comments that he made about Karl Anthony Towns being scared to come to the arena because he heard Jimmy was going to be there when he put 44 on Jimmy's head earlier this season when he was with the Miami Heat. and he was dealing with his longtime girlfriend's aunt who had just died of breast cancer. And then when he is then presented with that information, he not only doubles down, but then also makes sure that he promotes his podcast in the meantime. And his podcast sucks, by the way. And I'm just like, yo, man, I mean, I've tried to, I've always thought he was an asshole, but I've also said that, you know, that his being an asshole, I thought, has been integral and important to the Warriors dynasty and, you know, what they became, and him having that little bit of edge. This is a new level of asshole to me, because I just don't understand how, as a grown man, somebody comes to you and says, actually, no, this is the reason that he missed the game. And by the way, he did have 44 against Jimmy earlier this season. If there's ever a time to be a man and to say, you know what, hey, I said that. I'm not going to say it's not something I didn't hear, but it was wrong that I said that. I'm sorry that I said that. Blah, blah, blah. To handle that any other way, to me, just shows what a true bitch you are to me, and how much you're not an actual man. That's something that you learn as a man sometimes, is that you just have to just eat it and say you're sorry. And especially in a situation like this, criticizing him for not being there, coming up with this fake narrative. Nobody said that Cat didn't want to be there because Jimmy was there. Nobody said that. He just decided to say that, and he is hiding behind, well, that's what I heard. And for him not to step up and show some, it's not even humility, man, just, you know, just some humanity at that point, and just say, yo, my bad. Them two dealing whatever they're dealing with. I just thought, man, it was so weak, and I so badly want to beat them on Saturday. And I really hope this team, especially, you know, the other guys, I'm not even talking about Cat, especially Cat for sure, but I want the other guys to really step up and play with some. Don't let this be some game where you come out flat. There shouldn't be nothing flat about the Knicks on Saturday night.
Well, listen, they got more than enough time to rest, right? They're off till then. And listen, Nick, you know how I felt from Draymond since the start. You know, with you telling me, oh, well, you know, the way he is just part of being, you know, he needs that. He has to be that way. Like I've told you a million times, nobody has to be an asshole to be good. That's their choice, to be an asshole. And I think this is more proof of the fact
this
that
is off the court, though. I'm talking about on the court.
But Nick, he's been an asshole off and on the court his entire career. Nothing's changed. Yes. Nothing's changed. I'm not surprised by this at all. Right. You know, I mean, and oh, by the way, he's doing whatever he has to do to get attention, to say one-liners, to get attention or whatnot, to have people talking about the stupid crap that he says, because he'll say anything to get attention, regardless of how unfeeling or callous it is to his fellow man. You know, he's a jerk, Nick. He's an absolute jerk. He's a jerk on the court. He's a jerk off the court. He's a jerk when he's on TNT. He's a jerk all the time. He's a jerk when he wakes up. He's a jerk when he goes to sleep. He's just a jerk. And, you know, that does not, I refuse to ever accept that someone being a jerk, well, they got to be that way, you know, to be great or whatever. Well, if that's the case, then you need to figure out another way to be great. Okay, I'm sorry, Nick, but if you were that level of basketball player and you were being a jerk, I tell you, stop being an asshole. Okay, you don't need to be that way.
Right.
Okay, and I would tell your son, my grandson, the same thing. I'm sorry, man. That's just easy excuse for people to be assholes, and I get it that some pro athletes and some guys who are really driven and all that are jerky, but they're not all that way. Okay, so I think some people like to embrace that and say, oh, well, you need that edge to be that way. Bullshit. There have been a lot of great players who are nice gentlemen and good guys. When they get on the court, they play hard, but they don't play dirty, and they're not a jerk to their fellow man. This guy's dirty. He's a jerk to other people. And, okay, again, I'll even bring up the thing with the guy in Washington. You know, you just snuffing some guy out of the blue in his face.
Jordan Poole.
Right. I think that's
that was way
out of bounds. I don't care what he said. That doesn't matter. Way out of bounds. And I wouldn't have cared if Jordan Poole had gone and picked up a bat and hit him in the friggin' head with it. I wouldn't have blamed him, because that's exactly what I would have done against the guys that much bigger than me. And a guy like Draymond, his size,
and he sneaks
punches
you,
me in the face, sneaks me.
you.
I'm not going to try to go at that man hand to hand. He's huge. Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna hit that motherfucker with something hard and iron and make him understand what he just did.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And what's even more interesting about this is that, you know, Draymond Green, he criticized the shift in media towards, you know, titles and headlines and hot takes for clickbait. And now he's trying to get into this whole new media, and he's out here exactly always hunting that. And you could tell sometimes that it's not even, you could tell it's disingenuous sometimes, and you could tell that he's literally just trying to get that response. And you know, I honestly, I think that when
they're going to put him on. It's not going to be TNT anymore, right? But it'll probably be something like NBC when they form a new desk. And Draymond,
they're going to ESPN. They're going to ESPN.
He's going to be there.
I don't know about that. I think that I think that he is going to lose cachet as soon as he is not on the same team as Steph Curry. He's going to lose a whole lot of cachet. He's not. People aren't going to care what he has to say.
He's not going to be playing anymore, Nick.
Huh? That's my whole point. That's my whole point. So therefore he's not going to be on the same. He's not going to be with Steph Curry anymore, and therefore I just feel like his opinions. I could see him being like the Black Kurt Schilling. I could see him coming out and saying like some super wild shit where we get to the point where it's just like, okay, we this guy's canceled. We don't listen to him anymore. You know, I don't want to hear anything he has to say. Not just that I hope. I honestly can foresee that being the case with Draymond.
I hope you're right, Nick. But I also think if TNT was going to stick around and one of those guys decided to leave, the first person off the bench is Draymond. They want him on that show, Nick. Every time I see him, they're constantly bringing him up to the dais. You know, when he's saying this stupid shit about the game during the All-Star game, I'd like to think that the NBA saw that and were like, okay, we've had enough of this guy. We don't need him out here anymore. I hope so. But you know what, Nick? We'll find out, because if they put that guy back in front of a microphone, the NBA does, after the crap that he pulled during All-Star weekend, then I just don't get it.
No, I definitely, you would think that the NBA would have some, especially when it comes to the big TV contracts and whatnot, that they would have some sort of sway on that. Your boy Jamal Crawford, he's going to be working, I think, for Amazon, or no, NBC. He's going to be working for NBC. Did you check him out with Breen these last two games? I know 2 games ago, I think you watched the NBA TV.
But last night I listened to him.
Yeah, he's excellent, man. He's so good.
That's just the point too, Nick, is that it's not like Draymond Green. Oh, man, we got to use Draymond because, you know, the bench is empty. You know how many guys are vying for that position, former players in the NBA, who are glib, smart, and they're not assholes? Come on, man. There's a million guys out there, Nick, that we don't even know of, that are probably doing regional stuff that we don't even know about, that they're seeing that regional guy like we're seeing Jamal Crawford for the Knicks. Yeah, so we know he's going to be good on NBC. There's other guys like that out there, you know?
You know who sucks? I'm sorry, but I have to say it.
Yeah, I know who you're going to say.
Candace Parker.
Weak. First of all, she was a little hoarse.
Yeah,
she was not good.
She needed some hot tea with honey or some shit. And also just, I mean, her in the studio, I don't love her, but I don't like her as much as I don't like her in game. I mean, Jesus, I just thought it was bad. And I know I've seen some people, improve over time when it comes to that, but I've had enough of Candace Parker. You know, I just, she sometimes says shit that it's just like, you know, that's not true. like that. You heard with Shaq. Did you hear the whole thing with Shaq with Detroit, talking about Detroit and talking about how Chauncey, he was saying Chauncey's doing a great job over there. And it's actually Candace Parker who called him out. She let him finish. She said, hold on. I got to go back to this. But you said Chauncey's doing a good job. And he goes, yeah, he's the coach of Detroit, right? And she's like, no, he's the coach of Portland, and Bickerstaff is the coach of Detroit. And he's like, yeah, well, I don't really watch Detroit. I'll be honest, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, dude, come on, man. Like, I get it. You're Shaq. Everybody wants to hear what you have to say, and you're supposed to be funny, and you know you're everywhere. You know you're ubiquitous. Come on, man. Like, you can't be up there on it. Like, misspeaking and saying it is one thing. Them asking you and you getting a chance and not knowing that Chauncey Billups is the coach of Portland and that Bickerstaff is the coach of Detroit. I mean, come on, guy. Like, you're the guy that I'm coming to for analysis.
Come on, Shaq.
Got to be better than that. Shout out to our guy Keith Watkins, as always, showing us some love. Greetings from the ATL. If you are checking us out right now, please give us that like, give us that share, and give us that subscribe, especially on YouTube. We've been blowing up on some of the different social media platforms. Quite a few. You do look a little better.
It
You
was
were looking a
looking
little
too shadowy.
gold before.
Turn on the overnight light.
Over here, because the sun's setting and it's getting really dark outside. Yeah, my kids' baseball practice just got canceled. But
I was
yeah, man,
ask you about that because it's very windy.
Very windy, and it's supposed to rain in the next couple hours. So yeah, no baseball practice for him tonight. But when it comes to this just like new media space and everything, I'm just hoping that we do find a balance where we are trying to get these former athletes, and I do think it's important that they give their takes and they do have a certain amount of respect that comes along with their experience, and just the different things that they've been through. But at the end of the day, we have to balance that out with some people who can really speak about, there's only so many JJ Redicks out there. To me, he was the perfect, middle ground with like, he's an analyst of the game, but he's also a former player. And and sometimes I want to hear from a Chuck or a Shaq about something where they're kind of just giving more of a locker room perspective. But we got to make sure that we have somebody in that captain's chair that to me is more, say, like an Ernie rather than a Lefko, which is just like basically just like a glorified mascot.
Right. I hear that. I think this whole new landscape, Nick, is going to be very interesting going forward. I think there is something to journalism and the ethics in journalism, and I don't know. I do know that there are a lot of guys in the new media space who don't know a thing about journalistic ethics and don't care to know anything about journalistic ethics, and will say things just because they want to get clicks and attention, not necessarily because it's factual or insightful. So I think that there used to be a time that if you did that, if you were like that in media when it was all just journalists, you were summarily drummed out of media sooner or later. If you're constantly saying bullshit that's not true, you took a lot of journalism in school, Nick. You were a writer. You understand that. You understood that there were ethics to this. There are rules to this. You can't just say something because you heard it from one source. You got to hear from numerous sources and be able to document it, even though you don't have to give up, to be able to say these things. I think a lot of guys now are saying things because one person said it to them. So they're like, okay, I'm running with it, and there's nothing to stop them. Before it was an editor, right. or whoever ran your paper or your station would say, no, you're going to get fired if you keep doing this shit. Now nobody can stop them.
I think, and it sucks because, I mean, obviously, I'm your son. So I feel the same way that you do about this. And like, even in our little world right here, there's certain things that I hear that are interesting that I would like to talk about, but we'll talk about it personally, but I won't talk about it here because of the nature of it or the fact that it's somewhat hearsay. I just feel like, nah, we're not going to talk about this guy's business like that if we don't know it's true and it's not something that is related to the actual sport. And it's like, I just, I wish that everybody had that type of, thought process or integrity, but not everybody is built that way. And I don't know, maybe our channel would be bigger if we if we said some more wild shit, but that's not the way we want to get down. Again, thank you everybody for checking us out. Definitely hit that like, hit that subscribe, and hit that share. Hey, we're having a lot of fun here. And episode number 80, by the way, 80 straight weeks.
Wow. 80.
Cool. New York Jets, flurry of signings on day one. Took day 2 off, made some more signings on day 3. Seems like they are taking the even days off as day 4 has not amounted to any signings. I'll check right now just to make sure that nothing has happened. Just
they signed some guy like something, and they I saw something where I thought they signed another guy today. Was it a defensive lineman? But he was an outside rusher. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. So let's go ahead and run through some of the different signings that we have made. We have added defensive tackle Brian Cowart. This is a depth issue, a depth add for the interior defensive line. He's a former Patriots 5th round pick. We also added tight end Stone Smart. What a name. Um, he's
What
a
position?
former Charger. We got him on a 1-year deal, 26 years old. He's, his blocking struggles have kind of kept him off the field, it seems. And then we added Brandon Stevens, Ravens starter at cornerback. I've seen a lot of people, former Raven, like Ravens fans are like, they're applauding the fact that this guy's out of there. He supposedly got
Right.
picked on all the time. And I've seen a lot of people, the Michael Nanias of the world and some other people just, saying that this guy, they don't get the deal that he got. We gave him, I think it was I want to say 3 years, 35. It was decent contract. Safety Andre Cisco, Cuse guy, played for the Jaguars, a bit of a ball hawk. Really like him. A lot of people. I'm sorry.
From Queens.
Yeah, from Queens. I heard he actually grew up in Long Island, but yeah, he's a very he's probably born in Queens, grew up in Long Island, whatever.
He's
But
super
yeah,
pumped to be on the team.
super pumped to be on the team. And when I look at his highlight reel, I'm like, he's doing some shit that we're missing. You know what I mean? Like I said, a little bit more of a ball hawk. Can occasionally lay a big hit. I like this guy Cisco. I think he's a good addition, but that's just like I said for me looking at his highlight reels. But also the people that I respect, they seem to be pretty high on this, not so high on Stevens. And then Rashad Weaver. He is, again, not a super high profile move, but he's an edge rusher that we added, used to be on the Titans, 4th round pick there, and also was last year he was on some practice squads, so we're not expecting him to make any huge difference for the Jets, but you never know. And then this guy, right tackle Chukwuma Okorafor. It's not even just a Okafor, it's Okorafor. Listen, right tackle, is he an answer? Who knows? I also think that the fact that we're bringing in a center who has starting experience and also has relationship with another guy that we signed, I think that might signal that we have lost the big guy. He was having some connectivity problems, as you saw. He was going in and out. So it seems like he's been officially kicked out. I'm sure he will be hopping in as soon as possible. But yes, Josh Myers coming in and him being a center who has played before with another guy. And here we go. Big guy is back. All right.
Yeah, it's something going on with the laptop, Nick. I'm not sure what, but hopefully we make it through the episode. If not,
yeah. I mean, honestly, your connection was a little shaky before that, so I don't know if with the weather, what exactly the deal is.
right.
But it is what it is. This is live here, people. We move on. But Josh Myers, obviously has a relationship with somebody else that we know is now a new Jet. Isaiah Oliver, kind of a backup cornerback that we've had, and then we also re-signed our own Jamian Sherwood, and then Jamin Davis. Claimed off waivers from the Vikings before week 18. It looks like we went ahead and signed him for a deal this year. He'll be competing for a spot on the roster. So the big name that the Jets added, the guy that is going to be our starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, barring, something catastrophic happening, Mr. Justin Fields is the new quarterback of the New York Jets. It is a 2-year, $40 million deal with $30 million guaranteed. So you don't bring in a guy at $20 million per to be your backup. So obviously the new regime is looking at some untapped potential with Fields and basically running a very run heavy offense. What did you think of that signing when you saw it? I know that you have said, you wouldn't be upset about Fields. I am on record. I think we'd be a better team with Aaron Rodgers than we will be with Justin Fields. But as I always do, I have started to kind of, at least amend my thinking and try to get myself hyped on what this could possibly mean with Fields. What do you mean with Fields? What do you think?
Yeah, I think as far as I'm so past the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. We got rid of him for a variety of reasons, not just on the field, but whatever. It's over. That era is over. I think that Justin Fields, I think he's going to be better for us than what we've seen. I'm hoping that, like with this defensive back we picked up, I mean, I look at a guy like that and I say, he's not that good. But I feel like I'm thinking Aaron Glenn, being who he is as a defensive coach and a former defensive back, must see something that he feels like he can tap into with this guy and bring out of this guy. I think a lot of the players that they've picked up are probably players that Aaron Glenn has either seen, played against or something like that, and he's like, oh, we can work with this guy. I want to believe that. I think the Justin Fields thing, Nick, I think Justin Fields, first of all, I think we're going to be a better, much better running team because I think we're going to absolutely commit to the run. And I think him running RPOs with Breece Hall is going to be monstrous. Okay, I think Breece Hall is going to have his best season ever. And I also think him, running that RPO and taking it out of Breece Hall's gut and running around that right side, Nick, you're not going to be able to stop him on 3rd and 1. Okay, I think he's just too fast, most of these guys. And if you have to play him honest with somebody diving into the middle, there's no way they're beating him to the border, the outside, the sideline.
Breece Hall also has to do a better job of understanding that sometimes you just got to put your head down and get 1 yard. That's right. The thing. 100%. That's one of his deficiencies, 100%. In my opinion.
He has to do it. And I think also too, Nick, that roll to the right when with all these guys running at him because he's running for the sideline, dude, man. We have to have a tight end right there that can just drag across the field 6 yards downfield because that play could be huge. Okay.
Would you take this kid from Penn State, the tight end with the 7th pick overall?
Listen, I hesitate to take a tight end so early in the thing. And I would hesitate to do that. But I will say this, Nick, he's one of the best tight ends I've seen in a very long time. I watched at least three Penn State games this year before the playoffs. And this kid is like, wow. Okay. He's nice. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's really, really good. Now, I do think we'd be better off picking a offensive lineman or a defensive lineman right there. But if he falls to us, and by far we have him as the best player on the board at the time, I can see how that might happen because he is a hell of a player, Nick. So I don't know. I leave that up to the smarter minds than me to figure out. Of course, I think we should go offensive or defensive line there. But I also think I see there's a lot of guys, offensive and defensive line, that aren't picked in the first round who do very well in this league. So I don't know. And there's a lot of tight ends who do the same. But this guy is a special, special talent,
Tyler Warren, the guy that we're talking about. And yes, he's a fantastic prospect. I don't think you take a tight end with the 7th pick under any circumstance. It doesn't. Hey, if you look over, we got this guy Brock Bowers last year. He's the first one that was taken really early that's worked out in a while. You look at that kid that was taken with Atlanta. What's that kid's name? It's on the tip of my tongue.
I know you're talking.
He was
good a couple of years ago, Nick. He wasn't so good last year.
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, he was great a couple of years ago. He had a very good season 2 years ago. He had
one decent year. He does not. He has not played up to where he got drafted. That's a fact.
Is Arthur Smith featuring him as much because they changed everything in Atlanta this year? I don't know.
The coach's fault.
No, I'm just asking. Maybe in Arthur Smith's offense, they don't feature the tight end as much. I think in the Raiders clearly made a concerted effort to feature this guy Brock Bowers, and he's paid off.
I mean, if he was really good, they would figure out a way to get him the ball. And I just don't. I just don't think that I wouldn't take a tight end at that spot. Period. Point blank. I think that me, and I think this is even more important now that the Jets with that spot, unless somehow Shador falls, unless that happens somehow. It has to be an offensive lineman. It's a tackle heavy draft where they say there's a lot of great tackle prospects, and clearly we are going to prioritize running the ball next season. So go get an offensive lineman. Get somebody who's going, because the thing is that if this Jets defense can level up to what it was in those first couple years with Saleh, even though it'll look much different as far as just overall production, and then we can have a dominant running game, we're going to be in a lot of games. And of all the things that I've seen about Justin Fields, the things that have excited me the most are his highlights when he's playing with Garrett Wilson in college and some of the throws he's making to him. Because when you look at his, so the first thing I looked at was,
wait a minute, highlights. This center that they brought in played with them in college too.
That's my That's my that's what I was saying. That's why it's so interesting that we're bringing in this guy. And I think what that's also going to signal, I was about to say this just before you got cut off. What that's going to signal to me possibly is Tittman moving to guard and Vera Tucker moving to tackle. and the new center being the starting center. I think that there's because Tippmann's obviously had they both had experience playing those positions. So I think that maybe that might not be the plan, but I'm sure it was part of the thinking as far as giving yourself options depending on what happens. And then you got Fashanu, who should be healthy going into camp. And then if you take another tackle, you just have more depth possibly, or you just have this guy as a backup center. And as we always know, one of these guys is going to end up getting hurt. So right. I just think you take linemen there. I thought taking Fashanu last year was the move, even though, many people were saying we should have gotten some sort of weapon. And we saw he ended up playing tackle and doing it pretty well. We got Carter Warren. He's there. He's another option. I just want to have as many assets and as many, especially, young, cheap assets that can actually play in that offensive line room as we possibly can. And, you just don't take a tight end right there. And I think the defensive line, listen, if Jermaine Johnson can come back and be 80% of what we expect of him, Will McDonald continues to go up, and if he can level up from where he was last year, Quinnen in the middle, and then hopefully we can add another, big fat guy who can take up space and bottle up the run. I like that as my defensive line. There's going to have to be some rotation there, of course. But overall, I think that the play there is offensive line. And as much as I don't think that Fields is the best option that the Jets had going into this next season, I do think that once we decided to move on from Rodgers, when you look at the options that were out there, he was pretty much the best one. I don't want Kirk Cousins. I don't want, Carson Wentz or no Daniel Jones or no bullshit like that. But as far as the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, it's over. The reason it's not over, in my opinion, obviously as a team, whether or not we're going to have him, but as far as the conversation, Aaron Rodgers, if he ends up with the Giants and he somehow ends up looking really good and the Giants are able to get into say the playoffs, say he leads the Giants to the playoffs, it immediately becomes the same old Jets. Immediately that becomes the narrative. And also we are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if Aaron Rodgers ends up going to Pittsburgh, game 1 in MetLife Stadium, Pittsburgh versus the Jets, you can pretty much pencil that in. That's happening. If it's not game 1, it's probably opening Monday night, if not friggin', one of those type of games. And yeah, man, I just, another year off that injury, DK Metcalf or Neighbors.
I think you're going more half full with Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not feeling as half full with him. And I think it's a good chance it's as good a chance, maybe a better chance, that if he goes to the Giants and crashes and burns. Okay. I think that could happen just as well as he could be successful. I don't think the Giants are that good a team. So I don't think he's going to be I don't think any quarterback's going to be I don't think anyone's going to be successful there because I don't think they're very good. I think the Steelers are a better team, so he'd do better with them. But I also think, Nick, it's going to be interesting to see who he goes to and see how he acts in different situations. I don't think he'll be the same guy playing under Mike Tomlin as he was playing for the Jets. And if he is
under Saleh, but maybe he would be a slightly different guy with Aaron Glenn. And something I thought about this week when I thought about him going to the Steelers, I know that you hold Tomlin in very high regard, right?
Right.
So the fact that he potentially wants this guy to be his quarterback, where Aaron Glenn, even though he wanted to be the quarterback of the Jets, said no, I'd rather not. I wonder how you take that in, especially with the way that you feel about Tomlin.
I think Tomlin, Nick, it's a totally different circumstance. Tomlin has been there forever. He's entrenched. He's the guy. He is the Steelers. Aaron Glenn wants to get there, and I think that Aaron Rodgers would have been a hindrance to that. I've told you that. That's my opinion. I think he would be a hindrance to that simply because I don't want to hear any noise from anybody. I'm the noise, okay? Just like you never hear. Why is it? I mean, you didn't hear anything from the Steelers quarterbacks really last year. And this is the other
quarterbacks, but their wide receivers make noise all the time.
Right. And I think maybe that's why they brought in DK Metcalf. Are they going to give as much money to Pickens now? Okay. So they're not going to get rid of Pickens, but they're going to keep him around. But they just gave DK Metcalf big money. Maybe they're planning to keep Pickens, maybe not. But Pickens has not been the best citizen since he's been there. And And the coach has come out and said a couple times that this guy needs to get his shit together. The other thing I found out about this, Nick, is that we always talk about that, what's his name? Fields played this many games, and then they took him off the field. And even when shit went south for Russell Wilson, they still didn't bring Fields back. Well, as I understand it, if Fields had played another game, they would have owed Chicago a draft pick. So that's part of the reason they didn't put Fields back in. And they also say,
if you're trying to get into the playoffs, and at one point they were looking like they had a chance to, they looking like a chance. They definitely fell off towards the end of the season. At one point they were looking like they had a chance to win that division. So I don't think that, I would hope not, if I'm a Steelers fan, that we're not making decisions about a draft pick next year when it has to do with our ability to win this year.
The Steelers, I heard, also did want to keep Fields, but they didn't want to pay him as much as the Jets paid him, obviously. And they also say that there's a good chance that Fields was feeling some kind of way. We're like, dude, I had a much better record than this guy. He comes in, he's shitting the bed, and I can't get back on the field. No, I don't even want to talk to y'all, man. I want to move on. And I get that. I get 100%. That. I think that's a real possibility. But everything I'm hearing from the pundits is that they wanted to keep him. And over Russell Wilson, which is surprising. I don't know how it all works, but you let Russell Wilson finish the end of the season, but yet you wanted to keep Justin Fields. So it's all somewhat confusing.
I think they wanted to keep Fields as their backup, and they wanted to play him backup money. That's
right. But they want to keep Fields as their backup and bring in who?
Aaron Rodgers.
Maybe Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think listen, I just think that if Aaron Rodgers ends up
for him to leave,
if Aaron Rodgers ends up doing his thing next year and being very good, and the Jets, on the other hand, don't, you know what this says to me a lot. These.
Why are you so?
I said if.
I know, but that's what you keep bringing up. What I'm saying, put just as much energy in. What about if he sucks and the Jets are better? I think that's a greater possibility, because I don't think he's going to make it through the whole season uninjured. Personally,
I think that having a Justin Fields led team, having more confidence in a Justin Fields led team over an Aaron Rodgers led team is something that I don't really think that I almost would ever do. And I think that I just don't think there's any world where Justin Fields is better. I think that a style of play could be more advantageous to us overall, but I just don't think. I don't think the offense is better. I don't think the team is better with him being the quarterback as opposed to Aaron Rodgers. I personally feel like I want my coach to be the type of guy who cares less about the fact that I'm the only voice and is the type of guy who says, hey, I want to get the best players out there, and I can get through to this guy, and we can make the best of it because I'm me. I would rather that be his mindset overall. And what we're going to find out very quickly, especially since we're bringing in a guy who has all this supposed untapped potential, is when it comes to Ingstrand, especially, but also when it comes to, Muji and making the choice, and everything that falls in the lap of Aaron Glenn because he's the head coach. We're going to find out if you can coach now, because we're going to see whether or not they coach this guy up and, he does get to another level, if he has a Sam Darnold type year, or if he just continues to be the very mediocre, inaccurate passer that he's always been. The guy who misses wide open guys down the field and doesn't seem to see the overall field very well. If he continues to be that, then we didn't coach him up. Hopefully we can.
He played 5 games last year for the Steelers? Six? And he was 4-2? Mm-hmm. He won one less game than Aaron Rodgers, who played 17 games.
Yeah, on a much better team.
Right. I think, Nick, we're going to be a better team with him as the quarterback. I really do. Because I think our style of play is going to be more conducive to winning. And I also think our defense is going to be better. But I mean, listen, at the end of the day, which is amazing to me, we end up being top 5 in defense last year, which I don't even understand how that works out. But that's what the numbers say. That's why I say stats sometimes can be misleading, because you and I watched every game. I don't feel like we were a top 5 defense by any stretch of the imagination. I'm surprised we're in the top 10. Okay. But that's what the numbers say. So that's why I always say, don't get married to the numbers, because sometimes numbers can be misleading. I don't think Aaron Glenn is so as concerned. Maybe I misstated earlier when I think that Aaron Glenn personally wants to be, I'm the guy in my voice. I think he wants that for the team. And I think it's important for the team to be that way. And I just don't think, I'll be very interested if he goes to the Steelers to see what his act is like there. I'll be very interested to see that, and to be very interested. I had a lot of hopes for Aaron Rodgers. I really believed in him. I actually think Aaron Rodgers is a good guy. But do I think more now than I did a year ago that this guy loves to be the center of attention sometimes and all that? Yeah, I do. I think that right now, like some guys were talking about on the radio on the way home, if you're the Steelers, how long do you wait for this guy? How long do you wait for him to make a decision? I mean, at some point, like your boy, Chris Canty, said today that he thinks that this could drag on into April, which I don't know if that's true or not, but if it drags on into April, Nick, if I'm the Steelers, I'm like, okay, I'm not playing your game, dude. I mean, you're not even on the team and you're going to hang us up? It's stupid. But they did bring back Mason Rudolph, which I don't really get. But
see, I think with Aaron Rodgers and the feeling that he's this and that and a lot of that is playing the results. I think that if we're winning last year, if our overall, record is inversed, nobody is talking about all the other stuff. So I think that's playing the result. And I think that, at the end of the day, if a guy like Tomlin says, I think I can work with this guy, I wish my coach felt that way. I do. I wish my coach had that. I think
if our coach was in Tomlin's position, he might feel that way. I think in the position he's in, I told you from the start, if it's a brand new coach, I don't think I'd want Aaron Rodgers on the team. He's not the guy. I just don't think he would be the right person in that position for a new coach.
Fair. The Jets have 3 picks in the top 75. Obviously hitting on those, hey, Muji, it's your time. We about to see what you're about. We about to see what you can do. As we know, whether or not you hit on these early picks is probably the most important thing that there is when it comes to whether or not a team succeeds. Forget scheme and culture and all those other things. It's about whether or not you get the right guys in there and whether or not you're able to develop those guys and get them on a path towards continually progressing, or if they have to leave your organization before they can progress, which is what we've seen with the Jets over and over and all. But like Keith Watkins, I agree. I am excited to see what this Fields thing can be. I just think the ceiling is lower than what it would be if we had a guy like A-Rod at the helm. Catch us every week wherever you find your podcast. And if you're feeling the content and you think we are two loathsome, offensive brutes, and yet you can't look away, give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating. Make sure you subscribe and or hit that notification button on YouTube or wherever you're listening. New York Mets have another injury to a guy who was looking to be a starter and in the opening day roster. Jeff McNeil, strained oblique. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. Second base is looking like it's pretty much going to be a competition between Acuna and Beatty. I would say that Beatty is currently the guy who is leading in that competition. What are you thinking about the Mets getting hit with so many injuries overall? And would you like to see Beatty or Acuna be the opening day second baseman?
Injuries are clearly just part of spring training, man. I mean, even with the injuries we've gotten, many other teams have had much worse. Okay. I think it'll be Beatty because he's batting really, really well in the preseason, or I should say,
spring training
league. So he's doing well. I think he deserves a chance to play there. I don't know why, but to me, he just seems like a kind of tall and big to be playing second base. But if he can play the spot, it doesn't matter, right? I felt the same way about Rodriguez playing short, but he was able to do it at a very high level. I do think
Beatty did have an error at second base today.
You see what I'm saying? I do think that it'll be interesting. But listen, he makes an error or two. If he's ripping the cover off the ball, we'll learn to live with it. Right? Exactly. Bubble wrap until open day. Listen, though, I got to talk about this story. Did you hear the story about Soto and the guy heckling him?
I'm coming to it. We're coming to it.
Okay.
I got it. It's in the notes. It's in the docket. Okay. Real quick, I want to talk about Beatty. Look, remember, Beatty was our opening day starting third baseman last year.
Sure.
And then obviously Vientos overtook him, and I love what I see out of Vientos. I really want to see Vientos in the 2-hole and Soto in the 3-hole and Alonso in the 4. And then Nimmo came back for the first time today, and he went 1 for 3 in the DH spot. I would just I want that protection around Beatty so he can continue to ascend. That's one of the reasons I want it, and I like him hitting in that spot, and I like how that makes the right actually. Let's start off with a switch hitter, then a right, then a left, and a right. I just like that. But it seems like we're going to do Soto 2 and Pete 3. Call me a purist. Pete's not a 3-hitter. He's a cleanup hitter. That's just, Pete's also having a very, very good spring. But Beatty, slash line for the spring, 379, 455, 655. He did go 1 of 2 today with a walk. That's one of the things I've noticed about Beatty this year, and especially Pete. Pete's eye looks way better at the plate. I don't know what's going on.
Hope it
He
stays
said
that
that
way.
he made some big changes this offseason, he says, and just as far as like his overall approach and some of the mechanics as well. And Beatty talked about making some changes in his mechanics in the offseason. I don't know what's going on, but hey, I'm hoping that what we're seeing is that this Mets coaching staff, when it comes to both pitchers and hitters, we're able to get through to guys and come up with plans that allow them to level up while they're Mets. And our starting staff, I know it is spring training, but right now our starting staff has the lowest ERA in all of MLB. And also, this guy Clay Holmes is like a revelation. Blackburn stepping up. He's having great starts. I mean, man, we might be able to withstand. And Sean Manaea just yesterday threw for the first time. He's going to start up. It's going to take him 4 to 6 weeks to get ready, but he will not be, deep into the regular season. It's not a situation like we got with Montas. We should be getting him back in April at some point. So I feel good about the rotation. I feel good about the bullpen. I feel good about the lineup. Hopefully we're getting some of these injuries out of the way now. And, we're able to, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have big ones, and you got to just do your best to try to get through it. But this is exactly why you hear Stearns, you hear Uncle Stevie, and you hear Mendoza in the offseason talking about depth. And it's being put to the test early, and hopefully we're able to, pass that test.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, you got to like what you see so far. But pudding when the team gets out there. So we'll all be waiting with bated breath.
Yes. And let's go ahead and get to our guy, Juan Soto. And yes, I did see the story of the man in the turquoise polo yelling at Soto as he's walking out to right field that he's overrated and he's overpaid. And Soto in his next at bat taking the first pitch and depositing the ball basically on top of that man's head, and he hits it right at him. He jumps up, tries to make the catch. It goes over his head into. I'm telling you,
the guy fell down. It's perfect.
Fell down trying to make the catch. It was perfect.
Come on, man. That guy is not throwing a softball pitch into you. He's throwing a real pitch. That guy's trying to make you get a strike. And you're able to hit the ball, not just hit the ball, but hit the ball directly at the – I don't even know how that –
You think he did it on purpose?
I don't know if he did it on purpose, Nick, but the fact that if he didn't do it on purpose, it must be the greatest divine intervention I've ever seen. And then there has to be some purpose to it for it to actually happen. It's flipping a – I mean,
because Soto definitely acknowledged that guy and realized that guy was talking shit to him as he walked out. And then in that first at bat, the pitcher got over with a slider early in the count. And Soto, he remembers that shit. And he's like, all right, you try to do that to me one more time and we're going to see what happens.
I'm going to hit you Soto, turquoise out there.
And Soto right now in the spring, he's got a total of 2 doubles. And he is hitting 381. He's got the 2 doubles, 3 home runs, 6 ribbies. He's hitting 381
20 at bat.
In 23 plate appearances. He's hitting 381 with a 435 on base percentage and an OPS of 1340.
This guy's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. I cannot wait to watch this guy play. By the way, just found out I'm probably going to be in New York April 19th. No, not April 19th, but sometime mid-April. Definitely going to the Met game.
Yeah. Met game, maybe they're going to be. You mean that
Maybe
might be
maybe a Knicks
NBA
playoff game.
playoffs?
I don't know. I'm going to be there for on a Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll see what happens. And the Met game's an afternoon game, so if there's a Knicks game that night,
you
could be a
the
wild
tour of the city kind of guy. You know
what
just
I'm
out
saying?
here, just
and then the next day hang out with Uncle Tootie all day.
Nice. Yeah, that's what's up, man. That'll be nice if that all works out for you. And yeah, man, I just can't wait for opening day. Can't wait to get started. Lindor's had a tough spring. Hopefully he's getting all that slow start bullshit out of the way right now. And come March 27th, he can get it going.
Let's go, Frankie.
So big news coming out of the Knicks Lakers game that was on prime time a couple Saturdays ago was that? And at that game, it was caught by a cell phone. LeBron James confronted Stephen A, talking about his son, yelling at him during the third quarter. And when I first saw it, I thought maybe it was coming out of halftime, before the game, after the game, maybe. But during the third quarter, coming out of a timeout, he, gets in Stephen A's face. I think he clearly is trying to intimidate him by the way he's standing over him and coming at him. And you see that, and then Stephen A, because someone catches it on his cell phone, he's forced to respond. He spoke about it the next day. He went on Gilbert Arenas' podcast earlier this week, and he spoke about it, I think, even a little bit more strongly. And, his feeling on it is that he was not talking about Bronny. He's actually more so criticizing LeBron and how he's handled this situation. LeBron's pretty much doubled down on his statements, and Stephen A did clarify that, listen, I understand that I'm talking to a dad in that moment. And I thought that Stephen A in the moment handled himself very maturely, realizing that this is not the time to have a back and forth with this man. And I have a lot of other feelings on it, but I want to kick it to you. I want to ask you, how did you feel about that whole situation and how each party handled it and has handled it since?
Well, listen, I'll start out by saying, Stephen A's okay, but I do get tired of his bombast. I've gone through my iterations with Stephen A where I couldn't stand him. I've liked him at certain times. Now I'm kind of mid. He's kind of, he's a little too much sometimes. But that said, he's a journalist, Nick. He talks about things. I think I told you when they were talking about Bronny playing on the same team as LeBron. I said to you, if somebody in the locker room has some negative shit to say about Bronny, they can't say that shit around this guy. And the same thing clearly with certain journalists. He gets prickly about it. And I get it. It's your son. But you know what, man? Your son's a grown man. He's an NBA player. Guess what? He's going to be talked about by journalists, maybe sometimes in unflattering terms. Get over it. Maybe you don't need to have him on your team, or maybe you don't need to be in the league at the same time. But and listen, I don't even know. Honestly, Nick, I don't even know exactly what Stephen A said. Okay. So do you know what he said that LeBron was so offended about?
So I think there's a few things to break down here as far as what he said. And if you watch him on the Gilbert Arenas podcast, it's very, he gives like a full timeline of the fact that he never spoke about Bronny until he was in the NBA. He said that, people wanted him to speak about it, but he refused to speak about it, back when Bronny was in remember these conversations were happening in high school. And then obviously, his play in college. And he's like, I don't cover college. And I went out of my way to not speak about this because I always felt, and he's on record saying to LeBron, stop talking about. When he was in high school, LeBron in an interview said that he felt like this guy is better than some players in the NBA. And I just think that first of all, he was a good high school player. He was not a great high school player.
No.
Obviously, he goes to college. He has the heart issue. And then, he kind of barely plays after that for USC. He's not a major part of their rotation. And then he ends up on the Lakers. And with all of that being said, I still say I understand why LeBron did what he did and that he should be able to pull some strings and use his version of nepotism to get his kid on the team. Stephen A, the problem that he has, and he's not criticizing Bronny, he's criticizing LeBron. And that's the thing that he keeps coming back to. And the biggest problem that he had was, okay, first game of the season, Ken Griffey Jr. and Sr. are there. Let's get our moment. That's cool. Him getting inserted in games in like the first quarter after that, him not immediately just going down to the G League and having to put his head down and prove himself and show out there before he gets up back to the NBA like every other 55th pick has to. Him then after that having games where he's getting put in the first quarter in a game against Philly that's close, and Tyrese Maxey starts licking his chops and just, carves him up, which Tyrese Maxey does that to the best of the best.
Right.
But I'm saying, man, like I have my issues with Stephen A as well. I enjoy Stephen A to a certain extent, and I realize what a groundbreaking presence he's been in sports media. There's really, honestly, if it wasn't for Stephen A and the way that he covers the Knicks sometimes, I think I would probably like him a lot more overall. I'm one of those people that I can look at somebody and I can appreciate the fact that, like, he's got some of what he does is a bit of a person. He's playing a character, you know what I mean? Like he's the promoter for a WWE, like, that's almost kind of like his vibe. And I have liked being able to see him with his new podcast and whatnot, just be a little bit more, you get a little bit more of an understanding of what he is when he's not trying to just debate somebody all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
I'd like to see that more from him.
Yeah. I mean, he does his podcast every single day. The Stephen A. Smith show. But I feel like in this situation, when it comes to Bron, Daddy, you still with me? Because you're frozen.
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you, but it's saying that I've run out of some sort of memory, application memory.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, as far as Stephen A. is concerned, when it comes to this particular back and forth with him and Bron, I'm sorry, man. I gotta go with Stephen A. Smith on this one, man. I think that the way that LeBron came in and challenged him in that way, I think that was Bush League of him to do. And I think that Stephen A. Smith and the way that he has covered this from the very beginning, he's been pretty consistent in the fact that he just doesn't feel like you should take this guy and you should put all this extra pressure on him. So I just feel like, hey, LeBron, man, this is what you asked for. This is what you asked for. You didn't just get this kid into the league. And Stephen A. Smith was sitting right next to Kenyon Martin. He was like, Kenyon, your son's in the league. He had to come in. He was the 52nd pick, played in the G League, had to earn his way into a spot, and now he's figured out a way to be a rotation player in this league. He's like, you look at guys like Melo. You look at all these guys who have had their sons come into the league, and none of them have behind the scenes like tried to pull strings to try to get this guy to this particular situation. And even if they did do that, they did it very much behind the scene. Whereas LeBron was very out in the open in the way that he did this. And I think it has made things harder for his son. And I think for him to come at Stephen A., of all people, who I think that Stephen A., as compared to some other people in the media, has been much more forgiving of Bronny in the whole situation. So I just think, man, it was just bad form by this guy. And it's bad form by LeBron. And now he and his son are both having to deal with it. And I don't think it was fair that he tried to put that on Stephen A.
Right. I'm going to speak fast before this thing goes down again. So if it does go down, you can finish up the show. I do think that everything that is happening with LeBron, I said, was a real possibility when you're putting this guy on your team, all this, all that. And I mean, listen, like you said, I get the nepotism. I probably would do the same thing. But then just let it go, man. Let the guy go to the G League, whatever. You had that moment, let it go. And then criticisms, dude, get used to it, man. Your son's an NBA player. You are who you are. You're going to get a lot of arrows, man. If you don't want that or you think that's wrong, then you shouldn't have put him in this position. And I think it puts the young man in a terrible position, frankly. But here we are.
And I think that Keith makes a great point here that was weak for LeBron to approach him like that in that particular setting. There was no way for Stephen A. Smith to respond in any way that wouldn't end badly for him. LeBron knew this and tried to punk him. Exactly. I think that is
It's stupid. He could have talked to Stephen A. anywhere, anytime. It didn't have to be right then. You know,
it was weak.
What are you doing?
Dude,
man.
And you know, Bron is very calculated. He knew what he was doing.
You could ask Stephen A. Hey, man, let me rap to you after the game, man. Meet me in the hallway. Anytime,
and Stephen A. said that.
Stephen A. said
that too.
Yeah, it's poor form. Stupid.
Yeah. Really bad. All right, real quick before we get out of here, do you think that, Joker here recently, he had the first 30-20-20 game of all time. His numbers are out of control. Denver's been playing a little bit. I know that we talked about before that we felt like SGA was number one in the MVP. A lot of people really, really upset with us for not including Joker when we were talking about best player in the league, and we talked about Tatum. Many people think that it's crazy that we think it's Tatum. I think that they don't understand the point that we were trying to make when we were saying it's not necessarily about who's the MVP, but who's the best player. And I think that some of that has to do with, like, in a big spot, who do you feel like can make the stop or the bucket and who has the most chance? And that's part of why we both feel that way about Tatum, just because of his overall versatility on the offensive and defensive end. But let's talk about strictly MVP. Do you feel like Joker has possibly overtaken SGA in the MVP race with having another historic year numbers wise, not just the 30-20-20 and averaging a triple-double, but he's top 5 in 4 different major categories?
I still go with SGA, but I think it's going to be neck and neck till the end of the season. We have to wait and see what the next month holds, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, listen, both of those guys are deserving. And listen, there's some fatigue with Joker. Someone who he won 2 MVPs.
Yep.
So you want to give it to somebody else. Again, human nature. So I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said is true. As far as the fatigue part, I think that's why we're, even contemplating it being anybody other than Joker. It's not like SGA is slowed down. He's been balling out of control himself. To me, MVP is something that the overall team's performance should factor into MVP. And that's why SGA should win MVP, because they've had either the first or second best team in the league. But then at the same time, why aren't we talking about Donovan Mitchell in the same conversation? Fantastic numbers, and his team has been up there as well. So I definitely see that argument both ways. But overall, I do think it's going to be SGA. I would pick SGA if I had a vote right now. And this is one of the few times, and typically I don't like this as kind of a cop-out, I wouldn't be mad at co-MVPs.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Those two guys are so good that, yeah, I could see that.
Catch us every week on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts. Please follow, like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification button on all platforms. Really appreciate all the love. You can find us on all socials at Nic On Knicks. That's N.I.C. On Knicks. Love you, big guy.
Love you, kid.
Yeah.